The question about Hazal Sabesai flipped the night on its head, and Erkan Meriç's reaction made sparks fly. Welcome to Secrets Behind the Stars. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel. Your clicks keep this community alive. Now, let's talk about a farewell that wasn't supposed to become a battlefield, a finale evening that started with gentle nostalgia and ended with a single line eclipsing months of hard work. A goodbye party, a series closing its doors. And one pointed inquiry at the exit. In that instant, you could see it happen. The expression on Erkan's face shifted, like a calm sea catching a sudden gust. He tried to keep it neat and professional, he tried to draw a line, but social media had other plans. Did he truly not care? Or did that crisp refusal carry a lot more than it let on? Tonight, we're breaking down why a question about Hazal set off a firestorm, why the timing was so explosive, and why Erkan's stance has dominated the conversation for days. Did Erkan snap? The mention of Hazal turned a send-off into a spectacle. In the world of showbiz, there are nights when carefully laid plans mean nothing. Speeches of gratitude, teary embraces, wide team photos, sometimes all of it gets buried under 10 seconds of tension. The rap celebration for the TV drama, Karpinti, Heartbeat, became exactly that kind of night. After months of rushing between sets, surviving weather disasters, and living inside a story that finally reached its last page, everyone expected closure. Instead, they were handed a headline. For Erkan, this wasn't just a curtain call for a show. It was also a point of reckoning, an evening to take stock of expectations, disappointments, and the new crossroads coming into view. Karpinti had taken its punches, struggled to breathe under ratings pressure, and chose to bow out. Yet Erkan, in interviews and in quiet moments, always stressed the bond the crew had built. He wanted that night to belong to the team. He wanted it to be about efforts that didn't make it to the screen. But the tabloid world isn't sentimental. It doesn't wait. It doesn't back down. Inside the venue, everything looked normal at first glance. Long tables lined with plates and shared memories. Crew members swapping stories about the toughest sequences, overnight shoots, and that stormy week when everyone worked soaked to the skin. Some laughed freely, others wore the quiet weight of endings in their eyes. Erkan made the rounds, greeting each person with a handshake or a hug, whispering quick thank yous. He took photos when asked, chatted just enough to be present, then tucked himself back into the margins. Calm, even. But that restraint? It was the prelude no one knew to watch for. Outside, the familiar formation waited, paparazzi clustered by the door, cameras poised, microphones lifted. Usually the questions roll out like a routine. How are you feeling? What's next? Any words for your fans? But the script had changed. The rumor mill was in full spin over Hazal Sabesai's recent remarks upon returning from London. One sentence, "It's very recent," was enough to rip the seal off old memories. And then came the moment everyone was baiting. Do you have a comment about Hazal Sabesai being linked to Onur Guvanatam, the producer of your show? It sounded innocent on paper, but in context, it was a spark tossed into dry brush. A past romance, a fresh rumor, and a direct tie to the project Erkan had just closed, everything overlapped. The camera lights hit, Erkan's smile thinned. Silence. 3 breaths, maybe 4. The hush said as much as a paragraph. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and measured. People's private lives are their own. I don't comment on them. If you don't have a question about me, I'll be on my way. It was clean, polished, and final. But did it come from composure or from something splintering under the surface? Immediately, everyone asked the same thing: was he upset? Some pointed to his body language, shoulders held tight, steps that seemed a shade too quick, his gaze cutting away right before words landed. To them, he wasn't angry about the content of the question so much as the ambush of it. Others argued there was no anger at all, only a professional boundary. This was his cruise night, his show's send-off, and he refused to let it morph into a sideshow about someone else's rumored romance. Within minutes, the clip made its rounds online. Comment threads turned into arenas. Under the video, a chorus of contradictions began. If he didn't care, he wouldn't need to defend himself so clearly. You can still see the bruise. He kept it classy, what more do you expect? And just like that, the invisible lines were drawn between Erkan's fans and Hazal's. Same footage, different readings, 100 conflicting conclusions. The emotions they once shared as a couple still hold power over people who watched them, loved them, and never quite let them go. The reason this blew up so quickly isn't just the nostalgia. It's also the Hazal effect. She rarely lets the public into her private space, but this time she cracked the door. It's very recent, she said, almost tossing the words over her shoulder while walking past the cameras. Not an apology, not a confession, just an acknowledgement. And then, when pressed again, she fired back with a kind of cool defiance, something like, "Do I have to define anything for you?" That hint of self-assurance electrified the conversation. Naturally, the next question was, what does Erkan think? Which is where Onur Guvanatam becomes the fulcrum. He isn't just anyone, he's the producer behind Karpinti. That connection doesn't just touch Erkan's personal past, it brushes against his professional present. So the question wasn't merely about two names being linked. It hovered over a very specific workspace, a very specific hierarchy, and a very specific night meant to honor a very specific team. Those who were there say that once Erkan slipped back inside, he kept the mood afloat for everyone else. He raised a glass for the writers who stayed awake for days to fix broken scenes. He thanked the assistants who never stepped into the frame but carried the show on their backs. And to the handful of close friends who managed to get a quiet moment with him, he delivered a line that says more the longer you sit with it, there's a place and a time for everything. Not rage, not even bitterness, just the stubborn disappointment of a man who felt the night's purpose being pushed aside. This is the truth about Erkan and Hazal. Even though that chapter ended, their names still travel together in headlines like a pair of ghosts. People were invested. Viewers tracked their smiles and silences, tried to read between their posts, and built private myths out of tiny public details. It's no surprise that a half sentence at an airport and a half minute at a doorway could reignite every unfinished conversation about them. Meanwhile, the one real casualty of the night was the show itself. Karpinti had a final bow to take. The cast had a last round of applause coming, the production had stories that deserved to be told, tales from those chilled pre-dawn mornings, the extra takes that made a scene sing, the good luck rituals that became second nature. Yet somewhere between the click of the shutter and the clatter of the headline, the series was pushed to the background. That's the rhythm of tabloid time, it only beats faster when it senses a bruise. If you slow the footage, you can see the stages. Erkan steps out. A question lands like a pebble, small but sharp. He sets a boundary. The moment ends. But the conversation keeps rolling without him. People layered their own histories on top of his face and tone. Some swore they heard a crack beneath the calm. Others admired that he shut the door without slamming it. And there's a lesson tucked in there somewhere. Sometimes saying, "I won't discuss this," isn't indifference, it's a decision to keep something unbroken. The mystery is always what remains unsaid. Did the question reopen a tender place? Or did it merely annoy him because it hijacked a night meant for gratitude? Only Erkan really knows. What's clear is that a phrase like, "I don't comment on private lives," can carry two very different energies, depending on when and where it's said. On a red carpet for a brand launch, it might pass unnoticed. At a farewell for a team he respects, it becomes a statement about priorities. Hazal's side of this current storm also deserves understanding. Her words, "It's very recent," were followed by a posture that said she would not be cornered by anyone's expectations. Whether she's seeing someone or simply enjoying her own pace, the tone was unmistakable. This is her life, and she won't let anyone rush it into a headline before it's ready. Add to that the name Onur Guvanatam, and you get a storyline that the public can't resist, a blend of romance, workplace proximity, and timing precarious enough to make even a casual observer lean in. Inside the industry, whispers tend to sound like verdicts. But behind closed doors, people who were at the dinner say the atmosphere eventually loosened. Someone put on the show's blooper reel. Laughter rolled across the room. The lead makeup artist teared up as she hugged the costume team. An assistant director joked that he could finally sleep without dreaming of call sheets. Erkan sat with the cinematographer and clinked glasses, his voice steady again. The night took back some of what it had lost. And still, the clip won't stop climbing the trends. One video, a handful of seconds, now serving as a Rorschach test for an entire history. Was Erkan mad? You can pick your angle and point to proof. Was he composed? There's evidence for that too. It depends what you want to see when the light hits a familiar face. In a way, this is how certain stories become immortal. A goodbye party for a drama becomes a bookmark in a larger tale, the ongoing, complicated, deeply human saga of two people whose names still echo together. Some say the book closed long ago. Others insist some pages remain blank. Perhaps that's why curiosity feels so urgent whenever Hazal speaks or Erkan stands in a doorway deciding how much to say. What's undeniable is that lines were drawn that night, not between Erkan and Hazal, but between privacy and performance, between a celebration of work and a provocation designed to steal the spotlight. He chose silence. He chose to walk away. Those choices don't erase emotion, they protect it. And that protection can be a kind of grace. So did he flare up, or did he simply set a limit? Maybe the better question is, why did we need him to bleed for us to feel satisfied? Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave a sentence unfinished. Sometimes the most honest answer is the one that refuses to play. The night will be remembered, but not for speeches or a golden cake with the series logo. It will live on in that doorway, in that pause, in the sentence that closed the door on speculation without locking it forever. A farewell that became an artifact of celebrity culture, a turning point measured in breath rather than words. Tell me what you think. Was Erkan truly angry, or was he drawing a clean line around a night that wasn't meant for rumor? Is "I don't comment on private lives" a shrug, or is it the clearest way to keep something sacred? Share your thoughts below, like the video if you're with us, and make sure you're subscribed to Secrets Behind the Stars with notifications on so you don't miss what comes next. Happy New Year, and see you in the next story.